Third time's the charm. That's what I'm telling people. Ladies and gentlemen, variations thereof. Welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. This is the third damn time we've started this cast. I am so bad at this, it's hilarious. Casual. Today we're talking about Vampires and Werewolves. And all the various stuff that, you know, goes along with that. I'm actually kind of concerned we're not even going to be able to fit all of this into one cast, actually, because there's actually a lot of material, actually.
Let's see how it goes.
Anyway, my name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are...
I am Felix, also known as Banu Hanamasaishi.
I am James, also known as Aramithius.
I am Lejavion, also known as Icefire Warden. Team Edward sucks.
Team Jacob for life.
Yeah!
And once again, because we're going out to YouTube live this time, I just want to once again emphasize, if you've never seen even if you have seen the Twilight series, absolutely watch it with Riff Tracks commentary. I love those guys. That's why I'm always co-streaming them. Yes, and there's the real White Guar's Andrew. He's in the chat. He couldn't make it to the call today, but he's in there anyway. So hold on a second. Wait.
Well, we're starting with vampires, and I guess that means we should start.
I have a
with,
septum.
Okay.
Oh,
okay, we got a point. Cool.
Heads, we're doing vampires. Tails, we're doing werewolves. It's heads. We're doing vampires.
All right, there we go.
Cool.
I mean, there's no actual way to verify. For all we know, it landed up tails, and Chris just wants to be vampire.
I'm lying. Yeah, well, it could be. Yeah. I study Vivek a lot. Maybe it's just what I do. Okay. We'll do vampires first. Well, one of the things that I did want to mention is that both vampires and werewolves have a very strong Daedric connection. Which is now, does anybody remember what the lore was like back in the Arena and Daggerfall days for Vampires and Werewolves?
More werewolves. For
I
example,
have some
I know,
texts from Daggerfall, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think the hierarchy connection was kind of there in Daggerfall. There was nothing on vampires, though, if I recall correctly.
Well, there is a book. I have it here. It was called Vampires of the Iliac Bay, and it was seen only in the game Daggerfall. And its opening line is, "There are over 100 distinct kinds of vampire in Tamriel." So, yeah.
But nothing about the Molag Bal connection.
And all this other stuff, but they don't really mention, like, who created vampires.
And that's actually what I'm afraid of, because one of the biggest complaints I have about a Daggerfall lore and Arena lore is that it's not very heavily differentiated from AD&D, but it is kind of basically it's D&D with the serial numbers filed off. I mean, that was kind of the point, was that they just wanted to do their D&D game, but in a video game.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say that it wasn't until at least Morrowind or possibly Redguard that we started seeing the Daedric connection in an attempt to sort of differentiate vampires and werewolves from the typical fantasy trope.
I'm not
whether
sure.
they succeeded or not is arguable.
I was going to say, I almost think that there's something that might have come beforehand. Maybe it even got squeezed in Redguard. I don't know. Because in Morrowind, they introduced the Lamai Bal origin story.
Yeah, it was the first vampire.
But it was one amongst many. There were a few things that kind of nodded to it, specifically when you were talking about Vardenfell's vampires.
Yes.
That said that there were other theories out there about how it was done, which makes me think that in the way that Elder Scrolls lore tends to, they kind of had the singular narrative and then added complexity afterwards.
Yeah,
unless it was all kind of made whole cloth at Morrowind.
Right, they just started contradicting things as often as possible, and then And if anything, ESO has been a little bit damaging in that practice, because ESO is damn near canonized and outright stated that LeMay Ball it had a I'm going to say relationship, wasn't it? But was raped by Molag Bal, and then has been sort of causing the spread of vampirism. It is true that I don't think in Daggerfall can you catch vampirism and lycanthropy in Daggerfall.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could. It was considered a form of disease.
That's right, and it still is.
Actually, really weird too.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, no, in Skyrim, lycanthropy can also be sort of, produced in a person, I guess, via ritual. But vampirism is definitely still treated as a disease, and that once it progresses too far becomes irreversible, or difficult to reverse is the term I should use. And that was actually one of the many things that I really enjoy about Morrowind in its sort of open-ended, like open world kind of build your own adventure sort of thing that they pushed heavily in Morrowind's development was the idea of, the way that they treated vampirism was very much, from a gameplay perspective, something that you could accidentally find out about. And, unless you were doing your due diligence to read as much as you could, be something you got stuck with. And, like I said, unless you were paying really close attention, you would have no idea that you could reverse it or even fight it off or anything.
There's that and the different vampire clans and their politics between each other. Like
exactly.
It was very fascinating in Morrowind.
Although they did have, I think it was Gary Noonan in an interview just before Morrowind came out, and they said that they deliberately introduced it as a disease that could just get cured with a cure disease potion for several days afterwards, just in case you didn't want it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a very deliberate design choice to make it something that you thought, I've got a bug, I need to get rid of it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't supposed to be I don't know if it was a gameplay choice where they wanted like a more robust system of curing vampirism or something, or avoiding vampirism or what. I don't know what their plans were for that, but the fact that it basically just became a sort of, drink a potion before it's too late and you'll be fine, says interesting things lore-wise from a standpoint of gameplay, from a gameplay decision that influences the lore in that respect. And as much as vampires in Skyrim, for example, love to go on and on and on about how they're, the master race and superior in every way, they are also very conveniently forgetting the fact that they're basically just humans with STDs.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. If we're going to be just really blunt about it.
Well,
it's true.
Yeah, the purification rite in Dawnguard, which I unfortunately do not remember a stitch of. Does anybody remember the purification ritual in Dawnguard? I remember the ritual before Dawnguard came out, where you have to find a mage who's doing research into vampirism, and you have to get a black soul gem, I think.
Yeah, Valiant, the guy who was like, I've met Drimmer before. That weird dude.
Yeah, the guy who was just 90% bluster. I think it was the same ritual even after Dawnguard. They just said they knew about Thalion and sent you to him or something. Or was it? Oh no, was it the guy who's convinced RK is talking to him that did something special?
No, that's a different dude.
That wasn't him.
Yeah, that wasn't him. The guy in I don't know about pre-Dawnguard. I never fiddled around with vampirism before Dawnguard came. After Dawnguard came out, but before Dawnguard came out, if you caught vampirism, you could talk to this guy, and he would outright be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." But I do want to mention, not that this has anything to do with your crazy ass bullshit talk about vampirism or whatever, that I tend to wander around the area of such and such at around 3 a.m. every morning. Don't know why you'd come and talk to me. Just saying, I'm going to be there. And then if you meet him outside the town at these stones, where the ritual happens, turns out he's a necromancer. Duh. And he's like, yeah, you got vampirism. I can hook you up. You got to do a thing. And you go and do the thing, and then you come back, and he's like, hocus pocus, and then you're done. It's actually a reasonably quick fetch
like,
quest.
Whoosh,
but
you no longer have Twilight Syndrome.
Yeah, you no longer sparkle. And so So okay, I think James, did you want to talk about the actual Molag Bal connection and?
Yeah, I kind of have a conspiracy theory about what Molag Bal is trying to do with vampirism. It gets the Lamai Bal story that he raped a woman and created this race to be a mockery to Arche and so on and so forth. Mockery kind of seems to be Bal's thing in some ways, because Cold Harbor is kind of a mockery of Tamriel and how it's set up and how it looks. But I just kind of thought, when I saw Dawnguard, the whole travel to the Soul Cairn thing in Dawnguard, one of the ways you can do that is you can either be a vampire or you can have half of your soul stripped away, which kind of makes me think that vampires have half a soul, which is kind of interesting in itself. They're kind of between beings that are kind of in between life and death. They're not really either. They're called undead, but really not. But that's kind of the vampire's generic shtick anyway.
Yeah.
But if you've kind of got half a soul as a vampire or something like it, where does the other half go? If Baal is connected to vampirism, it would presumably go to Baal. So basically my thought was, well, was he kind of planning on storing up soul energy for the plane meld ages ago? Was he kind of stockpiling soul energy for something and using vampirism as a mechanism to get them?
That's an interesting thought. When a vampire kills somebody, what happens to is it possible there might be a soul absorption thing happening there? That's just a crazy thought I just had.
I mean, doubt it.
If you believe the Dark Brotherhood, it's possible, but I'm not inclined to believe the Dark Brotherhood, because they say whenever they kill anyone, their soul goes to Sithis. But they're probably not talking about Sithis.
I'm still not convinced that Sithis is a real thing. I mean,
unless it's like the whole Argonian thing that's going on with Sithis, which I'm not going to get into because it's wrong cast, but there's some credibility there that Argonians can actually do that shit. But I always thought that in ESO, the really weird thing about Lamai Bal is that when she shows up to you, she's kind of like a spirit god thing. She's not quite dead, but she's not quite alive either.
I thought she looks like, she doesn't look like a human, does she?
She kind of looks like an Imperial. I think she was
supposed
to
look
like
a
Need,
okay.
But, you know.
Yeah, Lamai Bal was originally
a
Nedic or Nedic woman named Lamai Bjolfang, or Bjolfag, and she was basically like the first thing that Molag Bal saw on his mission to embarrass Arche, and she was violently raped, and then she was nursed by nomads, but she ultimately died, and so they cremated her. She rose from the dead and like killed all the nomads, and then began to wander Tamriel, infecting others with vampirism and creating the first vampire lords that way, I think. Or sorry, not first vampire lords, but the first like vampires.
Because her strain of vampirism is actually unique, because it's like the only one that grants actual. They don't basically, sunlight doesn't bother you pretty much, because I guess hers is like the most pure. I know it's kind of like movie talk.
Hers is the purest bloodline, right? But there is a sort of distinction to be made where it does say on the UASB page that vampires that have been given their condition directly from the Daedric Prince Molag Bal are known as purebloods or daughters of Cold Harbor if they are female. So if you get it, basically, if you take Molag Bal's air quotations spear, then you can be a pureblood. Also, one of the things I like about vampirism, like going back to the quote I mentioned earlier from that book, Vampires of the Iliac Bay, and how it mentions there's over 100 varieties, is there are different named strains of vampirism in each of the games where it's been a thing. So in Morrowind, it was porphyric hemophilia. In I think Oblivion and Skyrim, it was sanguinaria vampiris. And in ESO, it's noxophilic sanguivoria.
Ooh, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Well, could it be, different diseases for different regions?
I mean, it's true, because there are different tribal
Yeah.
Well, there's different
Yeah.
clans, and the Noxophilic Sanguivoria, I think, is the one that you get from like Lame Ball, because it says it was common during the Second Era.
Yeah.
Those who have the strain are not weakened by daylight, but are instead strengthened during the night. Like,
Well, that they have a very specific ritual by the sound of it. There's a whole book that goes into their selection process, and it's all it's quite ritualistic in terms of you receiving her blood, being chosen as to whether or not you're worthy, and this, that, and the other. So you're getting it directly from the source, so to speak.
That's why I was like, one of my possible theories about how vampires have had souls. What James mentioned was that is it possible that LeMay gets the souls?
Ooh. Just constantly trying to fill a hole that never can actually be filled properly. Just she's part of her being becomes this gaping emptiness into which everything has to be emptied.
Well, through domination, obviously, it's sort of like repeating the trauma of someone else that you've experienced onto other people. There's a very psychological end to that. The idea of LeMay Ball not being a tragic, gentle creature, but then just, losing her mind and running around and raping other people, basically. It just, makes a lot of sense. I should mention that it wasn't an arbitrary decision to say that Molag Bal raped LeMay Ball. It's not it's not Kirkbride giggling about sexy stuff again. It's the original vampire mythology was entirely about sex, and most people know this of that vampirism, where or the act of a vampire sneaking into a woman's bedroom at night, kissing her neck is all very erotic fiction for the time that it was written. And it was absolutely a lot of sexual innuendo. So
see also the Legend of Carmilla, right?
Right.
Yes.
Which I'm not familiar with.
Basically, female Dracula would bust into married women's bedrooms at night. All that same good shit.
And convince them that maybe they were into women.
Yeah, and like bathe in blood and all that good shit as well. Like, you got to keep the goth kind of aesthetic, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think wait, were you going to say something, James? I'll let you
go. No, go on.
Anyway. But I think the reason why I came up with because I was basically feeding that idea about LeMay getting the souls from the half souls that you brought up was because I know in ESO it is brought up that LeMay is trying to basically work her way back to RK, and
really?
Why that RK wants to accept her again, but there's like some hurdles she has to jump through, and not to mention the fact that there's also like she's definitely just more than a mere vampire. There's no clear idea what she is now. So I'm like, we already know that Daedric energy can, through, we got the Demi Princes and other people who've been elevated to like immortality, stuff like that. Mana Marco doing his fucking thing. Maybe she's kind of become sort of a Daedra god herself. But,
Demi Prince, maybe?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. Yeah, a Demi Daedra, maybe. Yeah.
Have Daedra? I don't know.
Something, yeah. She used to be mortal, so is another one of those cases of by the way, of course I'm going to bring up the tribunal. If Molag Bal raped a human, a woman, a mortal, and turned her into a vampire, what happened to Vivek?
That wasn't well.
Well, wasn't it? Oh shit! Never mind.
Okay,
so that was consensual.
Was it?
No,
in
I
any
think
way.
it was.
No. Hang on. Okay.
Yeah.
So, here's the thing about what my understanding of the pomegranate banquet and all that shit that went down with Molag Bal. That was when Vivek was made aware of Chim or Kim or Kym, however you choose to pronounce it.
Chaim.
L'chaim.
And so what that was I attribute that kind of to how Odin sacrificed his eye for knowledge. Vivek sacrificed his, I guess, mortal innocence or whatever for godhood, basically, or the path to godhood.
Well,
and
it's more about minimizing the ego for via submission.
Yeah,
in order
Vivek was never innocent.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing, right? So like there's that sort of aspect to it, but we also have to remember that Vivek is a liar, and he's telling his exaggerated version of events in the 36 sermons, right?
Yeah.
True, but I would also point out that in not that anybody's supposed to know this, in DS E-Ray, Vivek is a vampire.
Oh, well, okay then.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which does not go well for anyone. I would just like to say that's a really fucking depressing book.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's really, really down.
Oh.
So yeah, you want to roll that around in your heads. Possibly Vivek's a vampire. Something to think about.
See, this already got canceled. I remember. I was young, but I remember.
So, like, I want Vivek to be like this really emotional, brooding guy who's a vampire, and he's like secretly in love with Azura, even though they like hate each other, but you really feel the sexual tension.
Great.
And guess what? Coda makes it canon, bro.
Vivek's sitting up in her bedroom listening to music. There's a possibility.
In some vague attempt to get this back on track,
Nope.
does this mean that does UST have something to do with Meridia's hatred of the undead?
Well, we know that Meridia has this really weird, like, I don't know, relationship with Molag Bal. It's like I like the way actually ESO did it with the Hollow City, because it's kind of a metaphor in a way. Because she pretty much takes a part of what's basically her realm and sticks it in Molag Bal's realm, but she protects it and he can't touch it no matter what he does.
And it just pisses him off so much.
Yeah, he's fucking enraged by this shit. And it's like the one area he can't take control of.
Like a little stone in your shoe and you keep stepping on it and you can't find it and you just can't get rid of it. Yeah. It's really great where ESO is sort of continuing this sort of tradition of Meridia and Molag Bal just friggin' hating each other, just absolutely hating each other. And being mad at each other the whole time, and all the rest of the Daedra are like, those two should just screw and get it over with, that kind of thing.
Fucking like it's got Chiogard in the background just laughing. Just fuck already. Get away.
Yeah.
Oh god. The memes are too real with this cast.
So why do you think vampires have in Elder Scrolls, why do you think vampires have a vulnerability to sunlight?
I have several theories, but I want to hear what other people say first, just so that there's no overlap.
Yeah, my key thought with it was kind of linked to the whole half a soul thing. If the soul is the kind of connection to Aetherius and therefore magicka and stuff, if you've got half a soul, does that screw with your ability to channel sunlight? Does that screw up your relationship to Aetherius and the sun and that sort of thing? It doesn't quite fit because vampires can still use magicka.
Exactly my point.
But I don't. But I'm not. But I can't really see any other reasons as to why, unless they're doing something to make it not proper magicka. Unless if their channel is a kind of a corrupted gateway or something that kind of warps it and can't accept the proper stuff anymore. I don't know. It feels like a reach, but that's the closest I can get.
It might be that sunlight is too intense of a glare of magicka. So
Possibly.
because they can do okay under starlight, which is also supposedly magicka, just not much.
Yep.
I have a very complicated theory towards that, actually.
Okay, shoot.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if you guys actually read on the Venasi, but there's a theory in there that I put in there that light in the theory is their version of water, and therefore light is memory as well as magic. And if you remember in Morrowind, in order to get the cure for vampirism, Warlock Ball has to go to Verminia, who's the future prince of nightmares, because vampires always have nightmares for some fucking reason.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, my theory is that since light is memory and vampires are always being plagued by chronic nightmares, is it possible that their weakness is actually memory, and memory hurts them?
I would say no, because blood would therefore be a bad thing for them, because imbibing blood and the kind of the life force of a person kind of feels like much more of an intense or distilled version of memory in that case. A person's water is their blood.
Not necessarily in the Elder Scrolls. I mean, I mean that makes a lot of sense in every respect, but
Right.
it's possible that you could. I mean, and again, I'm coming up with this off the very top of my head. I'm literally thinking about it out loud. It's possible you could argue that I have argued in the past that memory is imprinted on the soul, not the blood, which is why people trapped in soul gems are still somewhat aware of who they used to be. And souls that move to Aetherius, or more appropriately, that move to the Soul Cairn, are still aware of what they were or how they died. But if you drain somebody's blood into a bucket, you can't talk to it.
Yeah.
That's your reason.
Okay.
But at the same time,
Andrew,
it's really...
Andrew has also made the point that vampires traditionally can't cross running water.
Oh. I'm still working on blood and its connection to water, and I still like it. I still like it thematically too much, but I'm having trouble connecting it with how I understand that memory works. So, but other than that, I like it too much to leave it alone. So I'm going to think about that some more.
Yep.
The blood is like distilled memories, and then the light is just pure, unfiltered memories, and it's just like painful. No.
Just too, I really like the idea that vampires don't. Anyway, Felix, you had some theories?
Yeah, and thankfully they're none of the ones that people mention. In fact, they're
good.
kind of simple by comparison.
Simple is good.
Y'all are going real deep in this shit. I think mine's kind of
It's the only tool we have.
Gotta go deeper. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Arche is the god of mortals, burials, and funeral rites, right? And like life and death and all that good shit, right? That's his sphere. I'm not very familiar with Stendar, but I know the vigilants of Stendar are like really against vampires or something. Why is
they're against
that?
Daedra.
They hate everything.
That's true. That is fair. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we won't talk too much about Stendar, but here's the thing, right? So if the idea of Arche is to sort of bury the souls of the dead, and where does that go in the end, right? It goes to Aetherius, which is the magical light boundary, right? And like the big hole left by Magnus. Beyond that is Aetherius, that's Aetherius and Magica and all that shit. The reason why vampires are weakened by that is because they were built in mockery of that cycle. And so it's like matter meeting antimatter, and it causes a chain reaction. That's my lore-based reason for why vampires burn, most vampires anyway, burn in the sunlight in the Elder Scrolls, because their creation, and in opposition to the cycle of life and death, means they can't actually like reach Aetherius, and so Aetherius like burns them as a result. It's the same way like how you have the Aedra and the Daedra being separate, including their planes are very separate, and their spheres are very different. The Aedra are the earth bones, the spokes. The Daedra are the gaps between, the nothing. Something against nothing. And so that's why, matter and antimatter, that's why vampires burst into flame, because they can't ever really return to Aetherius, and the sun is basically a big middle finger of ethereal magic saying, fuck you!
So it's like vampires have Daedric bacteria, and light is basically Aedric antibiotics.
If you want to see it that way, yeah. Basically, it's like they can't coexist because they are fundamentally different properties of matter or creation, or however you want to define it. That would be my relatively simple way of explaining why vampires burn in the sun in the Elder Scrolls, because it has to do with their origin and how that ties into life and death and returning to water and the dream sleeve and Aetherius. That's my thing.
This is why you get your Aetherius shots, kids. Go to your Perigot CVS today.
No, not midichlorians. No, absolutely not.
I'm just
canon.
waiting for like something dumb like that to be put into Elder Scrolls 6 or something.
Oh, sure hope not. I'm still waiting on Elder Scrolls 6's Shihai mechanic to be like a rage meter, and I'm just gonna hit my head repeatedly against my desk.
I really want it to be Hammerfell or like the Iliac Bay, but until it is absolutely confirmed, I'm not really believing it unless Todd Howard himself knocks on my door and says, it's in Hammerfell, you can sleep soundly. And I'm like, okay, Todd Howard.
Okay.
Thank you, God Howard. Like, you know, that'll be that.
Please
so
try better on the Fallout
franchise.
Bye.
Anyway, so those, I guess, are different reasons as for why vampires burn in the sunlight, which begs the question, why are those created by Lamai Bal immune to the sunlight?
Because RK still loves her.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes.
Oh, what did you get? Bingo?
Hit you with that simple thickness.
Yeah. Either that, or it kind of it goes to the idea of she's not actually a vampire. It goes against an awful lot of what we're told. But if she kind of gets made into something Daedric or semi-Daedric, and if you then become part of that, you are part Daedra rather than vampire. It kind of begs the question as to precisely what vampires are then, which actually kind of ties in quite neatly with it being a disease and being different diseases. Even if it does come from Molag Bal, it can quite obviously mutate into different shapes and different forms. But there's part of me that thinks if we're going to go along that line of thought, why connect it to Bal at all? It's just a story that gets told, and they can obviously switch allegiances. I mean, the Ordum Vampirum in Cyrodiil is clear that they're not all necessarily associated with Bal. They just treat it like we owe our existence to Bal, and so he's great, but we prefer Clavicus Vile. And so that's that kind of story fable connection, but not a lot else. So vampirism, as we experience it, or experience most of it in the Elder Scrolls, the Daughters of Cold Harbor might be a different thing. Is not necessarily connected to Bal, unless you believe the origin stories.
I mean, it's pretty established, especially in Skyrim, that vampire, like pure-blooded vampires, also known as Daughters of Cold Harbor, are like a thing, and that's like the quote most powerful form of vampire. So because of that, I'm kind of like, I don't really see their need to or reasoning to lie about that, as it were. So just sort of because of that, I tend to believe the origin story that Lamai Bal was the first vampire, and that if you basically get raped by Molag Bal, you become a pure-blooded vampire, which to me is that's not the price worth paying, for that kind of power. I personally feel that's not, good, but it's other people, individuals.
Another thing though about that, which is interesting, is that LeMay is still somewhat vampiric, even though we don't know exactly what she is. In Skyrim, Serena can get cured.
That's true.
Which brings up that even though she's a daughter of Cold Harbor, she's nowhere near the level that LeMay is. Which still brings the fact that LeMay is something entirely different than everyone else is.
Yeah, and it's kind of intriguing as to why. Like, I wish there was more clear lore on it, because all we have in terms of like the origin of Lamai Bal is Molag Bal took human form and raped her, and then eventually she died and then came back, and she was therefore the first vampire. But we don't really know what else beyond that, like what made that special, if it was Molag Bal and how it was the first time, or how he was in Tamriel and that causes some difference. Like that part is left unclear.
Unless
is it possible that LeMay became part of Bal's being and she represents his innocence in a way?
No, if anything, she might be his ambassador on Tamriel. Because she like in the book it mentions that in return, like when she rose from the funeral pyre that the nomads had set, when that happened, she, quote, profaned them as she had been profaned herself. So that to me says, okay, so she's kind of like become an avatar of Molag Bal, but in Tamriel as opposed to in Cold Harbor.
Well, maybe the difference isn't that Molag Bal did something to her differently. Maybe LeMay Bal was the difference. Maybe there's something about her. Like, there have been plenty of people, plenty of mortals that Molag Bal have been going around raping. But something about LeMay Bal was the reason why she was able to internalize it differently or something. Just throwing that out there. Maybe she's the reason why it happened that way.
It's the way that it's described in the accounts we have. It feels like it was left quite ritualistically, as in she's dead and there's a drop of blood on her forehead. I can't remember whether it's hers or whether it's Bal's.
Oh, really?
But it kind of feels like it was left as a very, very definite, very definite thing. I'm doing this in order to stick two fingers up to RK, which isn't something that you can necessarily say was done with the other stuff. That it's not something that is done for every daughter of Cold Harbor. That's that as someone said, that the paradigm has already been established at this point. So it's not as big an act, or it's not the same type of profanity, so to speak. If that makes sense.
I mean, it links up to necromancy quite well, surprisingly, because Mannimarco was a worshipper of Molag Bal.
Yes.
And necromancy is a profanity, is the warping and twisting of life with undead creatures. And Mannimarco, of course, being Mannimarco, the asshole that he is, wanted to replace Molag Bal, and Molag Bal was like, haha, fuck off, noob. And, that's why he was gone until Daggerfall. But, Mannimarco still did his old God of Worms thing that still confuses people to this fucking very day. And I don't know, there's a lot of interesting connotations between undead and vampirism that, it's clearly brought about by divine means, but it's also a disease. But it's also necromancy. It's not necromancy. So
it's pseudo necromancy spread by disease, by infection. Yeah.
Which of course makes me think of
Andrew's pointing out something very, very useful in chat, which is that we can't ignore the fact that LeMay Bal was the first one for this. Maybe she may have been the first one to have this ritualistically done to her, but it doesn't really matter what the specifics are. The fact that she's the first one is the reason why she's different from everybody else. It's the only reason you need, really.
I mean, it's a strange retelling of. You guys saw Bram Stoker's Dracula, right?
Yeah.
Of course, I'm thinking about the Castlevania version because I watched the anime, but the Castlevania version did pretty fucking good. But we all know that Dracula's first wife was burned at the stake, and that's why he, went fucking batshit crazy. And LeMaya's origin story is kind of a retelling, a Elder Scrolls retelling of. I forgot her name. It was like Lisa something. But of her death at the stake, but instead of actually burning alive or being a heretical witch, she came back and took revenge on the people, or at least people she thought wronged her.
Yeah.
So that's also something that could possibly be looked into by someone that actually smarter than me.
So, trying to think. Do we want to cover anything else? Do we need to move on to werewolves? Werewolves?
I mean, we can. I was going like theory about disease and how Periite might be involved with that, but I might.
Yeah, why isn't Periite more involved in vampirism?
I mean, he's connected to it a lot, surprisingly enough.
How so?
It's never breached into it, but in Daggerfall, Periite needs you to kill a vampire for him. In Morrowind, his shield Spellbreaker is technically given to you because a vampire asks you to go get it because it can break the curse put upon him by Azura. And then in Skyrim, one of the ritual items that you need to talk to Periite with is Vampire Dust, which brings up an interesting connection between him and Moloch Ball and the whole spreading of the disease, which I personally have always been confused about because Periite's all about natural order. He likes balance between all fucking things. Vampirism is like a big fuck that to natural order.
True.
It's literally the warping of life into death and death into life. So it doesn't really make sense for Periite to be on board with that idea, but I mean, there's a lot of... I'm still trying to work out between that, but my theory is possibly that there's probably an ancient deal between Periite and Moloch Ball about the spreading of vampirism as an actual disease because it falls under both of their domains, but I don't know. Unless you guys have an idea about that, I don't want to ramble about Periite.
Unless it's, well, just a possible counterpoint to that, and I don't want to go too much into Periite either because this isn't a Periite cast, but is it not less that it's order as such, but it's his order? I mean, he's the taskmaster of the princes, right? He runs around putting the minutiae right because that's the stuff he can influence. That's the things he can do. So he's not wedded to natural order because it's natural order. It's an order because he can have a role in fulfilling it. So if he can jump on the vampirism train, he would be on board with that.
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, ESO finally actually confirms, thankfully. I was actually very happy about that he's the balance of the whole Mundus as well as Oblivion. So
yeah.
Wait, who's the balance?
Periite.
Huh. Wow. Yeah. Okay. They've definitely given him some more importance.
Well, they need to, because up until this, there's been like nothing.
I've been literally everything about that fucker.
Yeah, I know. You're like the one Periite fanboy I've known for so long. It's like people having a conversation and then you proverbially kicking open the door. It's like, good.
What about
Let me tell you about Periite.
Let me tell you a tale still on my lap. But yeah, but at least we want to go with the idea that vampirism and lycanthropy actually is like Daedric bacteria. Then, you know.
Yeah, because it is a disease that can be cured by various alchemical or ritualistic means. So I guess it kind of depends on the type you get or who you talk to.
That's true.
Yeah,
because like I'm assuming, right? Like I haven't played ESO yet. I really wish I could, but like I have done reading about it and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that like at least from a lore-based perspective, curing vampirism in Hammerfell wouldn't involve a magic ritual because the Red Guards are very no about Tamrielic magic. But it might be like, you need to like go and get this herb and stand under this star sign and say 10 prayers and then you're cured.
I mean, literally, Thalion is a Red Guard and he cures a daughter of Cold Harbor in Skyrim, so...
Okay, yes, but Thalion is a Red Guard who practices magic.
That doesn't mean he's still not a Red Guard, he's just...
I'm saying general Red Guard culture, and so in Hammerfell, the cure would be different than in, say, Cyrodiil.
Oh.
So is this an Ashabala thing?
Fucking
word thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, the only other thing I guess we should mention is that not all vampires get along. There's various different clans and blood feuds for power and influence. And that apparently the witches of the Iliac Bay apparently had a cure for vampirism, which consisted of 6 cloves of garlic, 2 shots of bloodgrass, 5 leaves of nightshade, the blood of an Argonian, and the ashes of a powerful vampire.
Is this Morrowind lore?
Oh.
My lizard boy said nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying that's allegedly how like witches in High Rock were able to do it.
Yeah, that kind of lends a bit more in terms of the kind of the fraction, the fractiousness of vampirism, the way that there are different diseases, different clans, and there's no for all Molag Bal's about domination. There's not really a lot of central authority when it comes to vampires. It's just people doing their own thing, which is a bit weird if you think about where they came from. It's just why on earth have they not got this central authority if they're about domination? And they partly are, they're not entirely. I think, particularly given the way that they're presented in the Elder Scrolls, they're kind of they're outcasts. They're scrappy for the most part and kind of barely human if you look at how the Volkihar clan were originally presented. In the
with like icy breath and emerge from like underwater. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, they're kind of they're barely human. They're kind of animals in some senses, which makes him think that they're much more about predation rather than rather than domination as such, because predators do not rule their herds. A lion does not tell the buffalo where to go, which is a bit ironic given Baal's actual sphere, that they almost have to collect mortals to dominate and kind of have their own nightclubs, so to speak.
Well, domination isn't really about telling people what to do. It's about taking something that isn't yours. You know, it's forceful thievery if you think about it. You know, it's violent crime. Yeah, doing things without someone's consent. So it's yeah. So it's not just about, you know, commanding people around and owning slaves and stuff. It's, you know.
Well, yeah, and also it's important to note that the different vampires of each, like not just each bloodline or clan, but also each province has a very different culture around it, right? So like the vampiric thralls and how they're treated and all the blood and gore we see in Skyrim would be utterly detested by the so-called order that exists in Cyrodiil, where they're far more, you know, sophisticated. They're the vampires that wear tuxedos and top hats and monocles, and they talk about stock options and shit.
They're the charming and wealthy vampires. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, the glittery
Although it's
vampires.
also worth noting that the vampires of Cyrodiil consider Clavicus Vile their patron god. And
see, okay, that's
Lame's bloodline. Actually, they're taught to despise both Molag Bal and Arkay for like what they did to Lame. So it's kind of like, okay, well, do they have a patron god, or is it just Lame and how she does her thing? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah.
You have the Wet Fang vampires of Black Marsh that tend to keep their victims in a magic-induced coma so that they can, you know, drink blood at their own leisure. You have like the various different clans in the Iliac Bay and Morrowind. Like I remember the Quara and the Burne are 2 of the clans of Morrowind. I don't remember the 3rd or 4th or whatever. But they're, you know, very much just like bandits. They're like, yeah, we found this cool old Velothi tomb or Daedric temple, and we live here now. Like it's very different, right? With each area. So there's like dozens of different vampire cultures, as it were, and just not one overarching theme of, yeah, we like black leather and Gothic architecture and metal. Like, you know,
And Morrissey, and that's what we're into. Yeah.
Yeah, and oh god, how could I forget? Who are they? The band. It's on the tip of my tongue. They did Depeche Mode.
There you go.
It, yeah.
Actually, you're kind of streaming into goth at this point, but all right, whatever.
Well, goth vampire, like it bleeds over.
So I think we got enough time to hit werewolves. If we want to do this in one cast, we probably should.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So similar to vampires, werewolves also have a sort of a disease-based system.
Actually, sorry. One last thing to serve as the transition into vampires and werewolves is vampirism can be cured by contracting lycanthropy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
If you have lycanthropy, you can't get vampirism.
That is technically a way you can, quote, cure yourself.
Oh, why silver? That's a good question.
Arsene has better stats than what Lagal does.
Yeah, so that's the way we segue into werewolves and lycanthropies. You can cure vampirism with lycanthropy.
But let's also discuss what they have in common, which is that both werewolves and vampires are vulnerable to silver. Why silver?
Like that.
That's, I think, a hangover from the broader cultural thoughts.
Yeah, but that's not our job. Lord it
okay, fine. Okay, fine.
We're not here to discuss real world problems.
Yeah.
Real problems.
Mm-hmm.
I am here to thoroughly dismantle the fantasy section that I delve into to escape the bullshit of reality, okay?
And chew bubblegum.
Break down fantasy.
But you are all out of bubblegum.
Exactly.
What is it about silver that makes vampires and werewolves vulnerable to it?
Well, it's never been talked about.
No.
Silver's just been silver.
Well, if we're making connections with the look of the thing, it looks like silver is a light metal, as in it's bright. It's got its own shine. It's got light in it. So, is it some potential connection to the sun or the moon or whatever, in the way that the metal's that's made, because it's got that iridescence, it's got that shine. That's purely going on the way that it generally looks, but it's all I can come up with on the fly.
I mean, in Utah, there was sororite, which was basically, it was described as, because I had an old idea that I saw in TS lore that I kind of stole a little bit, maybe, possibly, definitely. But they basically said that, like how ebony is Lorcan's blood, every other metal is the blood of an Aether. And then, of course, with Utah, I was like, I'm going to take that and basically make sororite the tears of Magnus, and that's why it's so cool. But maybe silver is some kind of, maybe it's Stendar's blood. It's just Stendar has such a hard-on against everything that's not Aedra. He's just like, fuck it.
I feel like there is some kind of connection with a god or something and silver. I don't remember where I read it, but
I'm feeling
I feel
that too.
like there was something.
So that's what I was just trying to recall. I thought it was, I could swear that there's some kind of a connection between silver and one of the gods, but I can't, it's not coming out of me.
It's possibly something from Daggerfall, because I don't remember reading anything in the later games about it. But I'm not gonna lie, it does sound very familiar, but I can't recall it either.
Yeah, that's the silver hand in Skyrim. Yeah, there's silver again. There's there's probably some really obscure corner of a text somewhere that spells this out, but I don't remember what it is. I just feel like I read it. We'll keep an eye out. That's a good. That's a good question, and it's gonna stick in my head for a while. So we'll keep an eye out for it. Yeah. Yeah, some kind of Aedric or earthing connection to the metal. I strongly suspect that there's an Aedric connection, but I gotta go out and prove it now. Like it's RK or something, like RK's metal or something. You know, like
probably Stendar.
Yeah, or Stendar. Yeah,
like
that could work.
Stendar.
Well, that it works against both would suggest something generally anti-Daedra. And correct me if I'm wrong, do we have... Does silver work against Daedra, or does it have to be enchanted? Because
I think it has to be enchanted, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Because I'm also thinking back to Daggerfall when they did stuff like that, and it was a little bit more simplistic, a little more cut and dry.
But there's also one of the pilgrimages in the Seven Graces, where you present a silver sword to a Dremora as a weapon to use. So there's part of me that's thinking, is silver something that has a connection to the Daedra in general because of that? Because it's another silver and Daedra connection. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. Anyway, there's definitely something there. We're gonna have to figure it out. Let's see. So, do we have any information on the origin of werewolves?
No.
No?
No.
I think
That's
we
actually
do.
a still very big mystery.
Ooh.
No, it
was Hircine related, if I recall correctly.
was originally created by Hircine, who bestows it as a blessing upon devotees and great hunters.
There you go.
Yeah, but I don't think it's actually, like, we don't know who, like, it was the first werewolf or why he did that in the first place.
Yeah, and for that matter, that's also only one explanation, and we generally like to have more than one. Yeah, that's and Hircine's so then of course we need to bring up the idea of Bosmer werewolves.
Well, we know. Oh, shit!
Right.
I just thought about something.
Shoot.
Fuck.
So if there's already a connection to the Wild Hunt, and then you've got Bosmer who are already shape changers, and then I mean, are they more likely to be werewolves? Is it? I'm just saying, maybe there's some lore there to happen. I don't know.
There's a group of Bosmer vampires in ESO that get under the influence of Hircine, and they turn into werebats.
Ooh.
They what? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
There is, in one of the Loremaster's archives, something that explicitly says that the call of Hircine is something that as a culture they have a problem with. That it kind of the idea of going to the hunter and being a proper hunter and being a werewolf and shape changing, it's absolutely, it's a complementary antithesis to the Bosmer because they're hunters, but they're also desperate to cling on to their form, and so it's kind of turning your back on what makes a Bosmer, and so it's something that as a culture they really, really don't like and have specific guards against. They recognize that it's a problem and something that would appeal to the Bosmer. In this particular Loremaster's archive, I can't remember what it's called. It's possibly the Turning of the Tide or something, but I can't remember for sure.
Hircine's the Slanesh to the Bosmer's Eldar confirmed.
Yeah.
Is that a Warhammer 40k reference?
Yeah, tick it off.
Has anyone got bingo yet?
No, I'm fucking close though.
Hircine gave man something like Prometheus then? This is why the legions are represented by wolves. Why are the legions represented by wolves?
Wait, what?
Is that a Roman thing?
If it's not, I'm sure we can make something.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. What connection do we have? There's things like the Wolf Queen of Solitude, but that one's a gimme.
Yeah, that's not really.
I think that was more metaphorical.
The Hounds of War. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. Ouroboros is suggesting something about Hecate. I suspect it's a holdover from Roman symbolism.
Yeah.
Or Greek, probably Roman symbolism. But again, not our job. we gotta lore that crap.
Fuck your real life world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always just thought it was dragons. I've never actually seen any wolf iconography for the Legion. So. Like, where is that at?
Yeah, where Urbos, where are you seeing legions represented by wolves?
Yeah, but
yeah, the werewolves have not really enjoyed sort of the same. Despite the fact that the companions are werewolves, there hasn't really been that much development of the werewolf mythology in Elder Scrolls. You've got like a you've got like a lot of connections with the standard real world werewolf mythology. The war between werewolves and vampires, which is of course our favorite sci-fi series for young audiences.
Twilight. Twilight.
No, I was referring to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, Twilight. Yeah.
Oh God.
Let's see.
Yeah, the obligatory sigh.
Geez, I really thought we'd be able to talk about werewolves a lot more than this. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can if we can get back the fuck on track.
Mm-hmm.
It's too tempting to make Twilight jokes in a fucking vampire werewolf
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know, which is why I'm being very patient with it. But okay, so here's the thing, right? Basically, the most information about werewolves and like culture and rituals we've gotten in Morrowind, Skyrim, and ESO. Oblivion did have it, but like not really to the extent that the others did, or at least not in a way that sticks out to most people's memories. So what we do know is that they've existed since at least the early Merethic era, and Hircine very much maintains a sphere of influence among them. Like, as we've seen in Morrowind, they'll come to you in your dreams and say, I have a job for you. And you're like, okay. It's like, tell me, Spear Daddy, where am I going next, right? So, like,
I've got a great relationship with dreams.
I'm beginning to think Vermina's more powerful than anyone has really realized. Anyway, well, especially like, the dreamer nightmares. I mean, do the fucking math.
Every time the day,
but basically,
nice.
the thing that also separates werewolf clans, like they're all packs, right? You have different ones. There's some like the companions, and then others that are just random little packs of friends or whatever. What does separate them, aside from Hircine being very involved, is that there's also a lot of tangible objects related to them, whereas there aren't really for vampires. So there's like the Totem of Brotherhood that you have to acquire in Skyrim. There's the Ring of Hircine that makes several appearances in the games. There's what is it, the Hunter's Mail or something like that? It's like this armor piece that Hircine gives you. So like there's all these different sort of actual physical objects that are related to werewolves. And ESO introduced the idea of werewolf lords, where they're kind of like, they can kind of do the vampire thing where they can transform on command. And they're still like beast-like, but they retain a more humanoid form. And so they can like they're less primal, and they can even cast magic and wield weapons. So that's like a weird thing that they introduced.
That's not
also, we don't know, like we didn't really discuss like when vampires are killed, like in the sense of burned alive and you collect their ashes or whatever. Do they go to Cold Harbor?
I think it was kind of, well, I mean, that kind of brought it to our previous discussion about how we were talking about where souls actually go to for vampires. We all know that werewolves go to the hunting grounds.
Yeah. But like
Oh,
for all the other vampires, especially those of the Lame Ball variety, it's like, well, if they reject RK and Molag Bal, then where the fuck do they go, right? So there's that. Also, we all know about silver being not poisonous, but like harmful.
Yeah.
To werewolves, like they have a weakness
bonus damage
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Werewolves also have aversion to specific herbs.
That's right.
Wolfsbane and belladonna are known to be poisonous to werewolves. And so they usually end up being like ingredients for trying to cure being a werewolf. And as we've seen, there's also rituals for curing being a werewolf, like when you have to, spoilers anyone, when you have to save Codlac Whitemane's soul, because he wants to go to like Nordic Valhalla.
And apparently he can't, which is noteworthy as well.
Yeah. He couldn't because he was a vampire. So
werewolf,
in order to do that, you have to basically like post-mortem cure his like werewolfness, which objectively doesn't make sense, but it's a fantasy game, so fuck it.
I mean, it's
werewolficitude.
They literally just rip out the wolf inside of him and beat the shit out of it.
And well, it's a very Nordic thing to do, don't you think?
Yeah. Was it a actually weren't they cursed by a coven of witches to be werewolves or something?
Yes.
It's not precisely a curse.
That's a bit different. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Yeah, because the cure involved the witches' heads.
Yeah.
So
that was the what were they? The Glenmoral Coven.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, were they actually involved with the original curse for the companions? And if so, it means that lycanthropy is something that's definitely less of a disease than vampirism. Because you've also got Hircine's ring, which is the become a werewolf at will thing. Right. And with the way that ESO is presenting it, it kind of makes me feel that it's going in the same direction. As you say, you've got the almost humanoid ones, and I'm fairly certain that somewhere I've seen the werewolves referred to as either Hircine's hunters or Hircine's hounds, which is not
that was in Lower Souls actually, because there's a part in Lower Souls where Prince Atropos and Soul and I think Inspector Colon are like, hey, Khajiit, can you guys help protect us while we go on a road trip through Oblivion pretty much to get back to the Imperial City? And they were like, yeah, sure. And then they pretty much have a fight scene in the hunting grounds where they're fighting off werewolves and shit.
Okay, cool. But that notion of kind of being a hunter, it's presented as a hunter rather than as a predator, which is something that's more civilized, so to speak. Hunting is something that people who think can do, whereas predation is something that beasts do, which kind of it ties in that much more with werewolves being a purposive thing, in a way that vampirism really isn't, because it's so easy to contract and they're not part of. Well, werewolves are ostracized, but I know for a fact that vampires, when they designed them, they deliberately were trying to make them really hard to be in civilized society in Morrowind. Like one of the lines from the interview was, "This it's not Vampire the Masquerade. This is something that will make you an outcast and go to the outskirts and everything else." Whereas werewolves seem to be able to blend in a lot better. And yeah, it's because part of it's because when you're a human, you're a human, but it kind of ties in with a lot more with the kind of civilized theme of hunting and that sort of thing that werewolves had. It's just something that's kind of struck me as you've been kind of talking through all of the links, which is a bit of a bizarre contrast because Hircine is called the father of man beasts.
Well, that's sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah,
that's
go on.
part of the that's the whole point of Hyacinth's spear. Whereas vampires are all about dominating, becoming stronger, better, faster, preying on the weak. Hyacinth pretty much says in all of his appearances, everything can be hunted, everything can be prey. That's the whole point of the werewolves ideology. They can blend in with the civilization, but at the same time, they're always hunted. They can be hunters, but they're predators and prey. And that's like the whole point behind Hyacinth's ideology. He's the aspects of nature. He's literally the survival of the fittest.
That's actually a neat little irony, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. The kind of notion of, well, you become this thing that's the ultimate hunter, and then everyone hunts you.
Yeah. But that's the price you pay for, obscene amounts of power and arguably a very long life.
Do they live longer than people?
I said that and then I had to pause and think about that. I don't know if they do.
Where's your source?
I don't have one.
That's
stuff that ain't Elder Scrolls probably. Yeah, I don't think they do. Yeah, especially I think that's right. So anyway, all right.
There is one thing I want to add though about curing vampirism with like the Glenmoral Coven witches.
Mm-hmm.
Like yes, we had to get their heads, but that's also a very Nordic way of going about it. There's also on the UESP, the witches offered to cure werewolves who came to the altar of Thrond of their lycanthropy. This was achieved through a ritual, although the witches had also enchanted a scroll with a spell to cure lycanthropy. So, like, there's a spell, there's a ritual, or you can cut their heads off for some other Nordic thing.
Yeah, that was definitely in Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Because that's where the Glenmoral witches actually first appeared at, was in Blood Moon. They were like these ravens.
No.
Yeah.
The Glenmoral witches appeared in Daggerfall.
Well, yeah, but they showed up again in Blood Moon, and we can actually
the connection to werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, in that sense, yeah.
But they showed up as like ravens, which is actually pretty interesting because Odin's ravens and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just hanging around. And they actually it's like, we can cure you of your locker coffee. You just gotta go for these little steps and shit. And then Skyrim turns into hag ravens and they're ugly and they just want to kill you.
So chat's bringing up some very interesting points, primarily about the connection between Hircine and the moons, and lycanthropy in the moons, and how does this also connect to Khajiit?
Yeah, because how often is a blood moon supposed to happen?
Shit, it seems like every other fucking day.
Whenever Hyacinth declares a hunt, which is wherever he feels like it.
Okay, so Hircine has some sort of dominion over the moons then.
Which, again, brings up the... what's her connection to Khajiit then, I mean, there's a shape-changing factor, of course. The two moons, the lunar lattice influence the shape that Khajiit take, of course. But then they also take over, the moon also influences the shape-changing of werewolves. I think. Wait, does that happen in Elder Scrolls? The full moon comes out and everybody turns into a werewolf?
It originally didn't happen in Daggerfall, because in Daggerfall you didn't transform it unless you killed somebody.
Right.
Like, it didn't. The moon connection didn't start becoming a thing until Blood Moon itself, in which, well, let me see. I know it's described in the lore as you will turn during the full moon, but since weather cycles weren't really a thing exactly in Morrowind, you didn't actually transform during a full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was there a compulsory transformation point? Was it just something as simple as nights?
There was a compulsory transformation moment in Blood Moon where
if
you had the ring on, Hyacinth's like, okay, transform now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was always linked to the ring. It wasn't just every few nights you would appear as a wolf.
Be right back.
Yeah. Because otherwise, Hang on. Just thinking about the Khajiit aloud for a moment. Azura created the Khajiit to be the best climbers, the fastest, and all these various attributes. Are there any of those that don't tie in with being a good hunter?
Nope.
Yeah, those two are the ones that immediately are the link, but I can't remember whether there's any of them that aren't in that whole list, which just immediately makes me think, well, was there some sort of connection to her scene that no one is talking about?
I mean, okay, you guys probably have Imperial Library open up on your computers, right?
Yeah.
Can you look up Lord of Souls lore notes and
Yep.
Control F Khajiit and Hyrule? Because I'm pretty sure they say something about Hyrule in Lord of Souls when they go into the hunting grounds.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I've just checked the words of Clan Mother and Isi, but the combination is fastest, cleverest, most beautiful people. Must make them must make them the best climbers, the best deceivers, and the best survivors.
The best, the huge.
So now I see that it's not necessarily as linked to hunting as I was thinking. Unless, well, you do need to kind of fool your prey, and hunting is about survival. So
it does fit his survival of the fittest mentality as well.
Yeah. So there are definite links with her scene sphere, but I can't connect that unless because Khajiit need to be good hunters, or actually, and Khajiit are also the hunted because they are at war with Nurni. Nurni is constantly against them. Yeah. Khajiit will be always hungry and always at war with Nurni. And that's why they need to be the best survivors. So you've got that kind of the same perpetual challenge that we've been talking about with werewolves. So yeah, there's a lot of thematics there that match up. I mean,
it also surprisingly connects to the origin stories of the boss murder Khajiit and how they used to be one singular people, and then Azura made the Khajiit, and then the boss murder got Yifrit, and if Hyrule has such a big heart on for the boss murder, then if the Khajiit are basically just boss murder with cat with cat things, it's possible that both of them were just like he wants both of them under his control, or he views them as his property.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting, but why is that just her scene's opinion, or does that have any basis in reality?
Not sure.
It's just like your opinion, man.
Although related to her scene in the Blood Moon, I was able to find that the Blood Moon prophecy happens once every era.
Oh.
Well,
not again.
It doesn't say when it will happen. It just says it happens once every era. So we can still get one in the 4th era. We can get one in the 2nd era. We already saw the one in the 3rd era.
Yeah.
Yep.
There hasn't been one in the 4th that I'm aware of.
Yeah, right? But I don't think Daedric eras follow normal eras because the Grey March is every 1,000 years and every era, and no era has lasted for 1,000 years, for 1,000 just 1,000 years. Yeah. The first era is almost 3,000, sure.
Yeah.
But it's not every 1,000 years change era.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know. I'm skeptical of those sorts of connections.
Well, then we're a little fuzzy, which is fine. It's supposed to be that way.
Yep.
But I think we should all spend a little bit of time, not necessarily right now, but I mean at some point, just kind of knocking around the Khajiit and Hircine and werewolves, just in general, and see if we can develop a little bit of a logic to that system. In the meantime, I kind of feel like we're kind of winding down here.
Yes, probably.
Does anybody else have anything they want to bring up? Super good.
I have one thing to bring up.
Shoot.
The Bosmer, according to the Green Pact, the Sylvanar can cure a Bosmer who has been unwillingly transformed into a vampire or a lycanthrope in general. Because it would stand in opposition to the Green Pact and the Wild Hunt. And so they're like, oh yeah, well, you kind of fucked up, but no biggie, it's here. We just whoosh and you're cured. God bless the Sylvanar or whatever.
And his name has silver in it. Deep lore.
We're professionals. And also, I'm just gonna make a random, like, okay, are there any like werewolves and vampires in Harry Potter? Yeah, wait, no, there is a werewolf.
Yes, there is a will.
Yep, absolutely.
Remus Lupin, and I have bingo. There we go.
Hey, all right.
We got Coda is mentioned, Vivek is a
Fantastic.
liar, the free space, Harry Potter references, and someone said earlier. So there we go.
Oh yeah, there were a couple of oohs in there too, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, I would have gotten bingo another way if someone had mentioned Young and someone mentioned the Slowed. So
Oh crap! I forgot to talk about the what is it, the id and its connection to vampirism, but that's fine. We'll get past it. We can get past it.
Oh well,
It's
you can do
okay.
it right now before we sign off.
Nah,
that's all right.
A real banger of a philosophical note.
I should do more research before I do that.
Cool.
So I don't know if we've had any ideas for the next cast. I'll just assume somebody's got one. It may have to be the Sothisil one, but that might delay depending on the availability of certain guests.
Yes.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
It kind of feels like we've got a Souls one brewing from conversations that have been happening around between the last two casts.
Mhm.
I have a collection of. I think we possibly need to spend some time ironing some stuff out. I will ping the document I'm working on for it
Great.
to you guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
throw it up in the Facebook group, and then
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
But we'll get to that when it's good and ready, because there's a lot of stuff that we need to cover there.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to parse, and then also we want to make it kind of one of those casts that you haven't. We want to get some data in there that you haven't gotten elsewhere, because there's been a lot of people discussing a lot of parts about Scrolls lore, and this is, Yep.
But we haven't really got one for next time necessarily. Next up in terms of series and so on is that we had in mind was the Etada that we haven't already talked about. But
we can see if we can fill up a whole cast on it. We'll see what we can do. Anyway,
we can come up with some ideas in the meantime.
Yes.
Yeah,
And in the meantime, you can upload the Riemann cast. Hey.
actually, that just went up, I believe.
Oh, hey, cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you guys missed missed the Riemann cast, then that's up now on YouTube. And okay.
Cold rainy day. I think I'm in the mood for some hot chowder.
Okay. And on that clean and wonderful note, everybody, whip goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Drink your Ovaltine.